Here we are for another round of the 70s versus the 90s, and it's out of this world with Steven Spielberg's Close Encounters of the Third Kind versus Robert Lieberman's Fire in the Sky. And this one was a hell of a ride, I'll tell you that much. So, first off, we got Steven Spielberg's Close Encounters of the Third Kind, which, for all intents and purposes, is a really impressive light show. The special effects on point, the design of the spacecraft are phenomenal, and and the cinematography too. Vilmos Zsigmond, one of the best, if not the best, cinematographers of all time, and of course the additional cinematography done by the likes of William A. Fraker and Laszlo Kovacs, who so you got the best of the best cinematography wise. So the movie itself is gonna look good, So even if it starts out a little slow and shit, you kind of vibe with it because it's fucking flashy as shit, and it kind of does suck you in the beginning, and because you got the kind of the novelty of having the great French director Francois Truffaut playing this guy hunting or kind of tracking down the source of these fucking occurrences and shit, linking it to the UFOs and shit. You got Bob Balaban as his interpreter and shit, who's not really an interpreter. He's a fucking cartographer or whatever the fuck shit's got to do with maps. There's a lot of like I wouldn't call them clever plot techniques, more very convenient, kind of hack, lazy writing and shit. But the film itself, once it starts getting into the fucking the woman with the kid that gets abducted, and then Richard Dreyfuss going through his fucking crazy shit. The movie's kind of fucking absurd, and very like slow burn, all build up and no fucking payoff, and it's like, and just the whole fucking mass hysteria of like, you hear the five tones, and then you're seeing that fucking mountain and all going, but what does it all fucking mean? We don't really understand these characters' motivations other than they're just like all of a sudden just summoned, beckoned, whatever the fuck, just called to this fucking place. And I don't know, it's just pretty fucking lame, especially the end with all the fucking little aliens and shit, and a fucking little symphony of language exchange going on. Like I said, a very impressive light show. But other than that, like like Richard Dreyfuss, he gets on the ship at the end, like all the people come off and he goes there, and that Spielberg just has a thing about like friendly aliens. Like he just kind of like how Steve Jobs had a hard on for like friendly computers. Steven Spielberg likes his aliens friendly. Where he expounded on that was E.T., but this was kind of the fucking entry point for dealing with extraterrestrials and shit. But then again, what is the fucking point? Because like dude gets on that fucking spacecraft, and that shit could be like what DB Sweeney's character goes through in Fire in the Sky, which was based on a true story, and it brings an even more frightening layer to it, because like Close Encounters of the Third Kind is a kind of a thriller in certain ways. Definitely the way it builds up, you don't see anything, it's kind of fucking the same way he does with Jaws. And it does not, they didn't show aliens. You see a lot of spacecraft, a lot of fucking flying lights and shit, and a lot of mashed potatoes and fucking dumbass, pulling up trees and shit. You see all this weird shit, and then Truffaut tracking it, seeing that shit in India, and it's just, it's one of those things where it's like, where is it even going? And it all ends up there, and it's like the kind of the fucking government takes it all over and shit, but like I said, it's just kind of everybody's just all at awe. All they can do is just fucking and I guess motherfuckers would be doing that shit anyways, but it doesn't have the intensity that like Fire in the Sky has, where like you just immediately are sucked into that movie, and the acting is way better. The cast is exceptional, because like DB Sweeney is insane, incredible, and Robert Patrick, James Garner as the skeptical cop investigator, and fucking Craig Sheffer, and even Noble Willingham as the sheriff, and like the townspeople in it. And there's so many levels to Fire in the Sky, and it's way shorter than Close Encounters of the Third Kind, and it covers a lot of the same ground, and even some other shit you could have expounded on. They didn't really. There's that kind of side plot of that organization afar that knows the truth about the aliens and shit, and that probably could have had more of that, but that's neither here nor there, because the movie kind of starts out as like a murder mystery, because they're not entirely convinced that this was aliens, because that sounds fucking crazy. And so the whole fucking thing is like the town's suspicious, they can't find the body, something's fishy. Then the motherfucker turns up, and then he starts remembering what the fuck happened, and that alien sequence is just fucking insane. It's honestly everything you want it to be in an alien movie. Like everything you didn't get in Close Encounters, you get in Fire in the Sky. And the fact that this is based on a true story, that right there should like shock you to your fucking core and shit, but who really knows? The truth is out there supposedly. I don't fucking know. But all I know is I gotta give it to Fire in the Sky for this round, because it's just, you get a lot more. Even that ending, because like the ending of Close Encounters, like, oh, it's just all his sins. There's a lot of fucking bullshit, heavy-handed imagery. Fire in the Sky just straight gives it to you. Pulls no punches. Just takes you there. And you're really like, fuck, and everything's so natural about it. It's hands down, because like Spielberg didn't really have the shock and awe ability that he would have with Jurassic Park, where it's like, oh, it's aliens and shit, so we just show you all this flashy shit. You kind of want a little more substance, especially with characters too, because I feel like more attention was put into the special effects in Close Encounters than they were into the acting and character development. The movie is kind of all over the place, and we're just kind of led to believe, just because it's aliens, motherfuckers are just gonna like, abandon their wife and kids and shit, and I mean, even though in Fire in the Sky, dude leaves his friend, but I mean, honestly, in that situation, what the fuck could they have really did? There was a possibility all their asses would have been abducted, and who the fuck knows what would have happened? Maybe when all come out, everybody survived. Just had, probably not as disturbing as the shit them boys went through in Deliverance. Well, who knows? The shit that we see and we don't see, because that's like a fucking nightmare of sort in the fucking, oh man, that's like some Jacob's Ladder shit, but Fire in the Sky wins this round. So for those keeping score, that's 17-19. The 90s are up by 2, so the 90s are fucking like really rolling with it, man. They don't fuck around. But like I said, the 70s are always there to fucking like surprise you with, the greatness that they had in that decade and shit. So who knows? But all I know is the 90s are fucking killing it right now. And like I said, if I've said anything wrong, anything you don't agree with, eviscerate me in the comments. If you got any suggestions, I'll be happy to look into them. I got several planned. These bonus rounds will pop up sporadically, as ever I feel the need to do one and shit. And so, like I said, 17-19, 90s up by 2. The next main event is The Godfather versus Goodfellas, so that one should be exciting. And like I said, this is me having fun, just writing my rough draft to a doctoral thesis, and less is more is less. Who the fuck knows? All I know is that you got to make a real ass movie. It's got to have emotion. It's got to be rooted in reality. It just can't be, relying on the whims of your fucking fantasies. It's got to be real.